They mocked her at the gate. Laughed at her camo, dismissed her as a YouTube girl. She doesn't belong here, they sneered. Not knowing the woman they insulted owned the ground they walked on. What happens when a black woman they tried to ban from the forest, turns out to be the CEO of the entire preserve? The air in Greenwood Preserve, a vast private hunting ground nestled in the heart of Georgia, hummed with the promise of a crisp autumn morning. Sunlight filtered through the dense canopy of pine and oak, dappling the forest floor in shifting patterns of gold and shadow. For some, it was merely a place for sport, for others, a sacred communion with nature. For Maya Thompson, a 32-year-old black woman working in the high-tech world, Greenwood was about to become both. Maya was no stranger to breaking molds. Her career in tech was a testament to her sharp mind and unwavering determination. But beyond the glow of computer screens, her soul yearned for the wild, the quiet discipline of the outdoors. She was returning to her passion for hunting, not just for personal enjoyment, but with a grander, more impactful purpose, to launch a YouTube channel dedicated to empowering black women in outdoor pursuits. Her channel would be a beacon, shining a light on diversity in a space often perceived as exclusive, showcasing the joy, skill, and connection to nature that awaited anyone, regardless of their background or skin color. Dressed for the hunt, Maya wore a practical, form-fitting camouflage jacket and pants, designed for movement and blending seamlessly into the environment. A sleek, modern camo hat sat comfortably on her head, its brim shading her eyes. Her trusted hunting rifle, meticulously cleaned and prepared, was slung securely over her shoulder. And by her side, a loyal shadow, was Bolt, her handsome, intelligent hunting dog, a well-trained Labrador mix, his eyes bright with anticipation, his tail giving a soft, excited thump against her leg. Bolt was more than a pet, he was a companion, a partner, a silent confidant in the quiet wilderness. As they approached the main check-in gate of Greenwood Preserve, Maya felt a surge of quiet excitement. This was it. The beginning of her new venture, her new chapter. The scent of pine needles and damp earth filled her lungs, a calming, grounding aroma. She presented her permit to the attendant, ready to begin her day. It was then that she saw them, 3 white hunters, standing near a beat-up pickup truck, already kitted out in their gear, their faces etched with an air of casual entitlement. Their eyes, sharp and assessing, landed on Maya. Their expressions shifted, almost imperceptibly at first, from casual observation to something colder, something laced with immediate, unmistakable disdain. Travis, a burly man with a perpetually sneering lip, nudged Cole, a leaner, more cunning-looking individual. Ben, the largest of the trio, his arms crossed over his chest, simply stared, his gaze chillingly dismissive. Travis was the first to speak, his voice loud enough to carry, dripping with a condescending amusement. "Looks like someone's lost their way, fellas. This ain't no beginner's course." His eyes lingered on Maya's gear, then on her, as if she were an absurd anomaly in their domain. Cole, his gaze sweeping over her, added with a snide chuckle, "Or maybe she just took a wrong turn. Thought this was the set for a TikTok video, huh?" His tone implied that her presence was nothing more than an attention-seeking stunt, a ridiculous charade. Maya felt a familiar prickle of irritation. This wasn't her first rodeo. She had faced this kind of dismissiveness before, the casual microaggressions that chipped away at one's patience. She took a slow breath, composing herself. She would not let their ignorance derail her purpose. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm, steady, and resolute, carrying the quiet authority of someone who knew exactly where she belonged. "There's no rule against women hunting, gentlemen," Maya stated, her voice clear and unwavering. "And there's certainly no law against women who look like me. I'm here to hunt, just like everyone else. With a valid permit, I might add." She held up the laminated card for them to see, her eyes meeting theirs with a cool, challenging gaze. Bolt, sensing the rising tension, let out a low, soft growl, a rumble of protective instinct. Maya's hand instinctively went to his head, a comforting touch that quieted him, but his eyes remained fixed on the men, vigilant. Ben, who had been silent, now stepped forward, his massive frame deliberately blocking Maya's path towards the forest entrance. His face was set in a hard, uncompromising line, his eyes burning with an almost personal affront. "Listen, lady," Ben growled, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "Things are different here. I have influence here. And I say you're not coming in to hunt with us. It would be an insult to me. To my reputation. To this club." His words implied a proprietary ownership over the land, a sense of exclusivity that extended far beyond mere permits. His gaze was chillingly clear. "You don't belong here." A surge of hot anger, sharp and unwelcome, flared within Maya. This wasn't just casual prejudice, this was an outright, direct blockade, an attempt to deny her access based on nothing more than his personal, bigoted discomfort. The nerve, the audacity, was staggering. She met his gaze squarely, refusing to back down, refusing to show fear. Before Maya could respond, before she could articulate the indignation boiling within her, Ben barked out a command, turning his head towards a small ranger station booth nearby. "Hey, Mark. Get over here." A ranger, a burly white man in his late 40s with a friendly but somewhat weary demeanor, emerged from the booth. He recognized Ben, and a familiar smile crossed his face. This was Mark, the ranger Ben often hunted with, his personal friend. "What's up, Ben?" Mark asked, approaching, his eyes still holding the relaxed pleasantness of a friend greeting a friend. Ben pointed a finger at Maya, his voice dripping with venom, his face contorted with disgust. "Mark, look at her. Look at this woman. A black woman, out here. She's just ugly, and she's trying to hunt in my woods. I don't want her hunting in the same preserve as me. It's an embarrassment. Get rid of her. Send her home." The ranger, Mark, turned his attention to Maya. His eyes, initially neutral, swept over her, taking in her dark skin, her determined posture, her calm defiance. A slow, subtle change came over his face. The easy camaraderie he shared with Ben, the unspoken allegiance, clearly outweighed any sense of professional impartiality. His friendly smile vanished, replaced by a scrutinizing, then disdainful, gaze. He was evaluating her, judging her not on her permit or her rights, but on Ben's prejudiced assessment. He frowned, his lips tightening into a thin line. He was choosing sides. And he was choosing the side of prejudice. "Ma'am," Mark said, his voice now cold, devoid of any professional courtesy. He didn't even bother to check her permit. "I think it's best if you just pack up and go home. This isn't the right environment for you today." His words were thinly veiled, a direct echo of Ben's demand. He was dismissing her, not on any valid rule, but purely based on the baseless, racist demand of his friend. Maya's jaw dropped. She stared at the ranger, then at Ben, then at Travis and Cole, who were now openly smirking, enjoying her humiliation. She had expected casual disrespect, perhaps even thinly veiled threats. But to be outright denied entry, to be told to go home by a uniformed official, simply because of the color of her skin and the fragile ego of a privileged hunter, it was a gut punch. "You're denying me access?" Maya asked, her voice incredulous, though she fought to keep it from trembling. "On what grounds? I have a valid permit. I've broken no rules. You're refusing me entry based on his racist opinion." She gestured furiously at Ben, her voice rising with a controlled fury. Mark's face remained impassive, hardened by his complicity. "I'm simply making a judgment call for the comfort of all our patrons, ma'am," he replied, using the vague, coded language of discrimination. "Now, please, cooperate and leave. Or I'll have to call for backup." He gestured vaguely to his radio, implying a threat of force. The injustice of it was suffocating. To be pushed out, to be denied her right, to be humiliated in front of these men who now stood laughing, their faces contorted in triumph. Bolt, sensing her distress, let out a deep, mournful whine. Maya's eyes burned with unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall. She would not give them the satisfaction. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. The rage that simmered within her was a quiet inferno, cold and unforgiving. She looked at the ranger, at Ben, at the two other hunters, memorizing their faces, their smug expressions, their open contempt. She turned slowly, her head held high despite the crushing weight of humiliation. She cast one last, scathing look at the men, a look that promised a reckoning, though they merely laughed louder, assuming their victory complete. Their triumphant cackles followed her as she walked away, her steps slow but deliberate, back towards her car, Bolt faithfully padding beside her. The sounds of their cruel mirth lingered in the air, a bitter taste in her mouth, a promise of a battle that had just begun. The laughter of Ben, Travis, and Cole, amplified by the Ranger Mark's complicity, followed Maya Thompson as she walked away from the check-in gate. It was a cruel, mocking soundtrack to her humiliation, a stark reminder of the prejudice she had just faced. Her hunting rifle felt heavy on her shoulder, not from its weight, but from the burden of injustice. Bolt, sensing her distress, stayed close to her side, his soft whimpers a quiet echo of her own silent rage. She reached her sleek, dark SUV, parked subtly out of sight of the main gate. The protective tint of the windows offered a welcome shield from prying eyes. She slid into the driver's seat, Bolt settling into the passenger footwell, his head resting on her knee. She didn't start the engine. She didn't pull away. Instead, she sat in the quiet cabin of her vehicle, her gaze sweeping slowly, deliberately, over the expanse of Greenwood Preserve. Her eyes, still stinging with unshed tears of frustration, hardened with a quiet resolve. She saw the towering trees, the vast, untouched wilderness, and she felt a deep connection to it. This place, this beautiful, sprawling land, was a sanctuary, a natural wonder that should be open to all. Yet, it was being tainted by the small-minded bigotry of a few individuals. The thought fueled a cold, determined fire within her. She wasn't leaving. Not like this. To flee would be to concede, to allow their prejudice to win. And Maya Thompson, CEO of a major tech enterprise, a woman who had shattered countless glass ceilings, was not one to concede. Her mind, accustomed to rapid problem-solving and strategic thinking, was already racing, formulating a plan. This wasn't just about her anymore, it was about every person who had ever been made to feel unwelcome in a space that should be inclusive. It was about proving a point, a powerful, undeniable point. With a swift, decisive movement, Maya reached for her phone. Her fingers, usually flying across a keyboard, now moved with a deliberate precision. She bypassed her usual contacts, going directly to a speed dial reserved for only the most critical, time-sensitive matters. This wasn't just a call, this was the call. Miles away, in the bustling administrative office of Greenwood Preserve, the serenity of the morning was about to be shattered. Mr. Evans, the grizzled, long-serving chief ranger and operational manager of the preserve, was sipping his morning coffee, reviewing reports. His phone, usually quiet, suddenly buzzed with an urgent, incoming email notification. The sender was a name that instantly commanded his full, undivided attention, Greenwood Outdoor Holdings, Corporate HQ. His eyes widened as he read the subject line, urgent, immediate inspection, CEO arrival. Mr. Evans nearly dropped his coffee mug. His face, usually placid, blanched. The CEO. Here. Now. Greenwood Outdoor Holdings was not just a corporation, it was the exclusive sponsor of Greenwood Preserve. Their funding, their resources, their entire corporate backing kept the preserve running, paid the salaries, maintained the facilities. Their word was law. And the CEO, a figure of almost mythical power, had never before made an unannounced inspection. This was unprecedented. Everyone. Listen up. Mr. Evans roared, his voice cracking with a sudden, raw panic. He slammed his coffee mug onto his desk. Emergency. The CEO of Greenwood Outdoor Holdings is on their way. Unannounced inspection. Get everything ready. Now. Move. 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 A wave of utter chaos erupted in the ranger station. Papers flew, chairs scraped against the floor, and frantic whispers filled the air. Rangers, office staff, and maintenance workers, who had been leisurely going about their morning duties, suddenly sprang into a frenzied dance of panic and preparation. "What do we do?" someone shrieked. "Clean everything. Check the trails. Make sure the gates are spotless," another yelled. "Is the guest lodge ready? Are the vehicles fueled?" Mark, the ranger who had just dismissed Maya, stood frozen for a moment, his face paling as he absorbed the sudden, terrifying news. The CEO. Here. Now. He felt a cold dread creep into his stomach. He pictured the chaos of the last few hours, the complaints about noise, the unchecked aggression of Ben and his friends, and, most damningly, his own blatant act of discrimination. A bead of sweat trickled down his temple. While the entire preserve staff plunged into a desperate scramble to prepare for the unexpected VIP arrival, Maya Thompson sat calmly in her SUV. She watched the flurry of activity at the ranger station with a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips. Bolt, now relaxed, snored softly beside her. She checked her watch. Her assistant, a meticulous and efficient woman named Sarah, would be arriving soon. Sarah was already aware of Maya's personal mission and the exact nature of the situation she was about to step into. The minutes ticked by, each one filled with the distant sounds of frantic activity from the ranger station. Finally, a sleek, black sedan pulled up quietly behind Maya's SUV. Sarah emerged, dressed impeccably, a briefcase in hand, her face a mask of calm professionalism. She exchanged a quick, knowing glance with Maya, a silent affirmation of their shared purpose. Maya stepped out of her SUV, Bolt stretching luxuriously beside her. She didn't bother to change her mud-stained hunting clothes. They were part of the message. She looked at Sarah, then nodded towards the ranger station, her eyes glinting with a steely, unyielding resolve. "Let's go," Maya said, her voice quiet but firm, a clear command. Together, with Bolt walking confidently at Maya's heel, they began to walk towards the ranger station. The stage was set. The curtain was about to rise on a very uncomfortable, very public reckoning. The frantic energy at the Greenwood Preserve Ranger Station was palpable. Rangers and staff, usually laid back, darted about, dusting surfaces, straightening displays, and barking hurried instructions to one another. Mr. Evans, the chief ranger, was a whirlwind of anxiety, his face a roadmap of stress. He fussed over a potted plant, then straightened a crooked map, every nerve ending screaming with anticipation of the impending, unannounced inspection by the CEO of Greenwood Outdoor Holdings. Just as the chaos reached a fever pitch, the heavy wooden door of the ranger station swung open. All eyes snapped towards the entrance. Standing in the doorway was Maya Thompson, still in her mud-stained camouflage hunting gear, her hat pulled low, and her face set in a grave, unyielding expression. By her side, Bolt entered with a quiet dignity, his senses alert. The ranger who had earlier dismissed her, Mark, was among the first to spot her. His face, already pale from the frantic preparations, contorted with a mixture of fury and disbelief. He'd just spent the last hour sweating over the possibility of the CEO seeing so much as a stray leaf, and here was her, the troublemaker, still lurking, still a potential contaminant to their carefully crafted image. "What are you still doing here?" Mark snarled, his voice a harsh whisper, laced with a fresh wave of irritation. He marched towards Maya, his hand already extended, intent on physically ushering her out. "Get out. Now. The CEO is coming any minute. We don't need you complicating things. Disappear." His tone implied she was a stain, a smudge on the pristine facade they were desperate to present. He saw only a black woman who didn't belong, certainly not in front of a powerful corporate figure. Maya stood her ground, her gaze unwavering, refusing to flinch. She watched Mark approach, his hand reaching for her arm, the contempt in his eyes raw and undisguised. She felt a surge of cold fury, but her composure remained absolute. Just as Mark's fingers brushed Maya's sleeve, a figure stepped swiftly and silently into the space between them. It was Sarah, Maya's assistant, her demeanor as unruffled as her perfectly tailored suit. Sarah moved with the quiet authority of a professional who knows her place and her power. She effectively, yet subtly, blocked Mark's attempt to touch Maya, her eyes, though calm, holding an unmistakable warning. "And just what do you think you're doing?" Sarah asked, her voice low, smooth as silk, but with an underlying steel that cut through the frantic atmosphere of the room. Her gaze was direct, unwavering, challenging Mark's aggressive posture. Mark, momentarily stunned by the unexpected interjection, glared at Sarah. He hadn't seen her enter, his focus had been entirely on removing Maya. "I'm removing her, ma'am," he retorted, gesturing dismissively at Maya. "We can't have her here. It wouldn't do for the CEO to see a black woman like her loitering around. It wouldn't look good for the preserve. It would be unprofessional." His words, once again, dripped with thinly veiled racism, oblivious to the fact that he was speaking to a corporate executive's assistant. A moment of stunned silence followed Mark's pronouncement. Mr. Evans, who had just rushed over, and the other staff members froze mid-motion, their eyes widening in disbelief at Mark's incredibly unprofessional, overtly racist statement. The casualness of his bigotry, spoken so openly, hung heavy in the air. Sarah's composure, however, remained unshaken. She didn't raise her voice, but her eyes, which had been calm, now flashed with a chilling intensity. She turned her head slowly, looking directly at Mark, her expression a mixture of profound shock and a dawning, terrible realization for the Ranger. "What did you just say?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it cut through the room like a razor. She paused, letting the silence amplify the weight of her words. Her gaze flicked from Mark to Mr. Evans, then back to the Ranger, whose face was slowly draining of color. "You think it's unprofessional for the CEO of Greenwood Outdoor Holdings to see a black woman here?" Mark's confident sneer wavered. He suddenly noticed Sarah's impeccable attire, the expensive briefcase, the aura of undeniable authority that radiated from her. A seed of doubt, cold and terrifying, began to sprout in his mind. He looked at Mr. Evans, whose face was a mask of utter horror, then back at Sarah, a tremor of apprehension starting in his gut. "Because, you see, Ranger," Sarah continued, her voice now rising, clear and resonant, "you're quite mistaken. Massively mistaken, in fact." She stepped slightly aside, a theatrical gesture that fully revealed Maya Thompson standing calmly behind her. "Allow me to introduce you. This is Ms. Maya Thompson." Sarah paused, letting the name hang in the air, then delivered the final, devastating blow, her voice ringing with triumphant clarity. "Ms. Maya Thompson, CEO of Greenwood Outdoor Holdings. The very person you just said it wouldn't do for you to see. The very person you just tried to physically remove from these premises." The words hit the Ranger station like a bombshell. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Everyone, Mr. Evans, Mark, and every single employee, froze. Their faces, already pale from the earlier frantic preparations, now went ashen. Their jaws literally dropped. Their eyes, wide with disbelief and dawning horror, darted from Sarah to Maya, then back again, trying to process the impossible revelation. Mark's blood ran cold. His mouth fell open, but no sound came out. The ugly black woman he had ordered to get out was the CEO. The silent, seemingly powerless figure he had treated with such contempt was the person who signed his paycheck, who held the future of this entire preserve in her hands. The weight of his bigotry, his casual cruelty, his astounding professional misconduct, crashed down on him with the force of a tidal wave. His knees felt weak. He looked at Maya, truly seeing her for the first time, not as a black woman, but as a figure of immense power, of undeniable presence. The sight of her mud-stained clothes, her composed but stern face, magnified the gravity of his colossal error. The other staff members, having pieced together the horrifying reality, began to stammer, their faces a mixture of terror and belated, desperate politeness. C.C. Co. Ms. Thompson. Mark stammered, his voice barely a whisper, his eyes wide with a plea that was already too late. He looked utterly defeated, utterly broken. Maya stepped forward, her gaze sweeping over the shocked faces of the employees. Her expression was grave, unwavering. There was no triumph in her eyes, only a profound weariness mixed with resolute determination. She spoke, her voice clear and strong, cutting through the stunned silence. Yes, Maya confirmed, her voice devoid of emotion, I am Maya Thompson. I am the person who funds your conservation efforts. I am the person who pays your salaries, who ensures the continued development and preservation of Greenwood Preserve. She paused, letting the truth sink in, letting the full weight of her identity settle upon them. Then, her voice hardened, a steely edge entering her tone. And I am also the person who, just an hour ago, was verbally abused, physically threatened, and told to get out of Greenwood, the very place I am exclusively sponsoring, because of the color of my skin and my gender. The finality of her statement hung in the air, a devastating indictment. The implications were clear, terrifying, and undeniable. The employees, including Mark and the visibly distraught Mr. Evans, stood utterly condemned by her quiet, powerful words. The comfortable illusion they had built around themselves, the casual prejudice they harbored, had just been brutally shattered by the very person they least expected. The air in the Greenwood Preserve Ranger Station was thick with a silence more profound than any forest hush. It was the silence of utter shock, of crumbling arrogance, of shattered assumptions. Maya Thompson's words, delivered with calm authority, hung in the air like a final judgment. I am the person who funds your conservation efforts. And I am also the person who was verbally abused, physically threatened, and told to get out of Greenwood, the very place I am exclusively sponsoring, because of the color of my skin and my gender. Mark, the ranger who had so brazenly dismissed and threatened her, felt his world collapse around him. The color drained from his face, leaving it ashen. His bravado, his contempt, his very sense of self-importance evaporated in an instant, replaced by a raw, naked terror. He looked at Maya, not as the ugly black woman he had tried to expel, but as the formidable CEO, the architect of his fate. The full, crushing weight of his prejudice, his ignorance, and his gross misconduct slammed into him. His knees buckled. Without conscious thought, Mark crumpled to the floor, a heap of mud-stained uniform and broken pride. He scrambled forward, crawling clumsily towards Maya, his hands clasped together in a desperate, pathetic plea. Ms. Thompson. Oh, my God, Ms. Thompson, he stammered, his voice choked with despair, tears blurring his eyes. I am so sorry. Please forgive me. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. It was a terrible mistake. A horrible misunderstanding. Please, don't do this. Please. He groveled, his voice a desperate, pleading whine, utterly devoid of the arrogance he'd displayed just moments before. He was a broken man, stripped bare of his authority and his prejudice in one swift, devastating blow. Mr. Evans, the chief ranger, stood frozen, his face a mask of horror and shame. He had been aware of Mark's casual biases, perhaps even overlooked them in the past, but never had he imagined such a blatant display of bigotry on his watch, especially directed at someone of Maya's stature. He looked from Mark's groveling form to Maya's unwavering gaze, knowing that the damage was profound, perhaps irreparable. The other staff members remained stunned, their eyes wide, their bodies rigid. They had witnessed the casual racism that had festered within their ranks, often unspoken, sometimes indulged. Now, they were seeing its direct, devastating consequence. A cold understanding dawned on many of their faces. This wasn't just about Mark, it was about the culture that had allowed such behavior to persist. Maya watched Mark's desperate display without a flicker of emotion on her face. Her gaze was steady, piercing. She let him grovel for a long, uncomfortable moment, allowing the weight of his actions to fully settle upon him. His immediate, abject fear was clear, but she wondered if it was genuine remorse or just the terror of losing his job. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm, yet resonating with an undeniable authority that commanded absolute attention. "Stand up, Ranger," she instructed, her voice flat, devoid of any warmth. "Groveling won't change what happened." Mark slowly, shakily, pushed himself to his feet, his head bowed in shame, avoiding her gaze. "This isn't just about me, Ranger Mark," Maya continued, her voice gaining a quiet power that filled the room. "I am fortunate. I have the resources, the position, the power to make my voice heard. But how many others, black women, black men, people of color, people who don't fit into your narrow definition of hunter or outdoorsman, how many of them have you, or people like you, turned away? How many have left this preserve feeling exactly as I did? Disrespected? Humiliated? Because of their skin color? Because of their gender?" Her gaze swept over the silent, contrite faces of the other rangers and staff. "I wonder how many people have been denied the beauty of nature, the peace of the outdoors, simply because of the pervasive, ignorant prejudice that seems to have covered this place like a thick, unwelcome fog." Her voice hardened slightly. "And it's not just racial prejudice. It's also about what I witnessed from those other hunters, men like Ben, who lack the basic knowledge and respect for the environment, for fair play, for fellow human beings. They represent a culture of entitlement, not a culture of outdoor ethics." She paused, letting her words sink in, knowing that the men she spoke of were likely clients, potentially powerful ones. "We need more than an apology. We need a complete, systemic overhaul." Mr. Evans finally found his voice, his own face contorted with shame. "Ms. Thompson, you are absolutely right. This is unacceptable. On behalf of Greenwood Preserve, I offer my profound apologies. We will take immediate action." Maya nodded, her expression grim. "Indeed, you will, Mr. Evans. This preserve, funded by Greenwood Outdoor Holdings, is meant to be a place of enjoyment, conservation, and inclusion. It is meant to foster a love for nature, for the environment. Not to be a bastion of narrow-mindedness and discrimination. This is not what we stand for. This is not what we pay for." She looked at her assistant, Sarah, who nodded almost imperceptibly, producing a tablet. Effective immediately, Maya announced, her voice firm and uncompromising, "Ranger Mark, for gross misconduct, blatant discrimination, and bringing disrepute to Greenwood Preserve, will have his salary docked by 3 months. This will serve as a permanent, painful reminder of the consequences of his actions." Mark flinched, a silent gasp escaping him. 3 months' salary was a severe blow, a public humiliation he would carry. He deserved it. Beyond that, Maya continued, her gaze sweeping over the entire staff, "This incident has exposed a deeper, systemic issue. Therefore, every single employee of Greenwood Preserve will undergo mandatory, intensive retraining. This will cover not just customer service and ethical hunting practices, but also, and most critically, comprehensive diversity and inclusion training. You will learn what it means to foster an outdoor culture that is truly welcoming, truly equitable, where no one is turned away because of their skin color, their gender, or their background." She looked at Mr. Evans. "Mr. Evans, you will personally oversee the implementation of this new training program. And you will ensure that new, prominent signage is placed throughout the preserve, at every gate, every trailhead, every public building, clearly stating Greenwood Preserve's unwavering commitment to equality and inclusion for all. These signs will be in English and Spanish, and will explicitly state our dedication to a welcoming environment for all races and genders." The staff, humbled and chastened, stood with bowed heads, listening intently. The shock had worn off, replaced by a grim acceptance. This was not merely a reprimand, it was a revolution. Maya was not just punishing them, she was forcing them to confront their biases and build a better, more inclusive future. "We are building an inclusive outdoor culture," Maya concluded, her voice gaining a note of powerful conviction. "A culture where everyone feels safe, welcome, and respected. Where the wonders of nature are accessible to all, not just a privileged few." This incident, while painful, will serve as a catalyst for change. Greenwood Preserve will become a model for outdoor inclusivity, a beacon for what an equitable and truly welcoming environment should be. As Maya finished speaking, the silence in the ranger station was no longer one of shock, but of profound contemplation. The path forward was clear, and it was one of transformation. The future of Greenwood Preserve, once threatened by the casual ugliness of prejudice, now held the promise of a truly inclusive and equitable sanctuary for all who sought the beauty of the wild. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any thoughts or opinions about this story, feel free to leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to our channel to support us. Your support means the world. Thank you again.